right, what's going on, everybody? Sorry if you heard me screaming in the background. We are having a great Monday morning so far. Hopefully, you guys are doing the same. Shout out to everybody invested in Palantir, hitting over $34 a share. That's absolutely phenomenal. A lot of people have been following that one for quite some time, so I'm glad some folks are starting to get and reap a lot of rewards associated with it. So no real agenda today, other than just going through some of my portfolio and checking it out and seeing if there's any nuggets that are out there. I know of one that I definitely wanted to mention to everybody on the chat. So hopefully we can get around to that piece. And I think, let me just double check something really quick here. Hopefully you guys are having a good Monday morning. Oh, I guess it's afternoon. Jesus. September 9th, 2024. Let's get the banner up here. September 9th, 2024. Contemplate becoming a member, a subscriber. Don't necessarily have to become a member. Contemplate becoming a subscriber. It is completely free. Things are going great for me, as always. I'm going to make sure I put on subscriber only mode to get rid of the trolls, because there are trolls out there. Oil recovering a little bit, 68.77. Henry Hub gas, $2.15. So that's a positive compared to where we were just a week ago. What else was there? There was Apple, which came up to speed, $2.21. Amazon, $176. Dutch Bros, $32.50. Google, which is one that I want to talk about, and hopefully you guys bringing the heat associated with that. We could chat a little bit about it. Below $150 a share once again. Palantir, $34.56 after hours. The S&P just below 5,500. But if you're looking at SPYI, 547. Then you got the Qs at 455. Bitcoin just below 60,000. Like I said, no real big agenda today. We can talk about whatever the hell you guys want, but really it's just me to get after it with you guys, chit chat, have a conversation with you guys. I feel like on Cash Flow Chronicles, we generally just get after me in our own thing with me and Mr. Patel, and I don't necessarily get the opportunity to chat with you guys as much as I would like. So I want to take that opportunity a couple times a week to do that with you guys here. And then also when I do Palantir Weekly, Rocket Lab Weekly, all that stuff, we interact with the audience quite a bit. But I feel like because I've been doing these other podcasts on other people's channels, I don't necessarily get to interact with you guys as much. And I know some of you guys have been around since I started really doing YouTube back in like 2017, 2018. And then you've seen me more from a dividend-only investor to now being more of like a SPY investor, S&P 500, I mean, not like a Russian agent like some people are out there getting paid these days like. And it's not me. I wish it was. Not because I want the Russian money, but I just want money in general. But really the reason want to do this is because the portfolio is morphed and matured, and I feel like 10 years worth of experience now, going basically from $0 to let's say close to however many million. We can have a different perspective, right? Because I went from $500 being a lot of money, and investing that, and penny stocks being the thing that I tried, and recognizing that that wasn't the way, to really just recognizing that there's so many different ways, right? It's like culture, right? It's, you live in Japan, you live one way. You live in the United States, you live another. It's not to say one way is right or wrong. It just really depends on what's right for you and what helps you sleep well at night. And so I've been able to morph through that, right? Originally, I thought dividend investing was the way because of my perspective. I thought I was going to get laid off, what was that? I guess close to 10 years ago. I didn't necessarily know if I was going to have a job. Oil markets were tanking at the time, and I saw some people already get laid off, and I thought I was next, and wanted to make sure I had some sort of income. So dividend income was the route. And then it got to the point where dividend income started getting pretty good. I think last Friday or Thursday, I don't remember when it was, I was chatting. It was like 2021, I made $21,000 in dividends. 2022, I made like 25 or 26K in dividends. And then I was just like, what am I doing this for? Like, am I trying to get to 30,000? What do I need $30,000 in dividends when I'm 30, 31 years old? It just didn't make sense. I was like, what makes more sense is to try to grow the portfolio to as big as I can, and then eventually roll over again back to dividends. And I felt like when I was focusing on dividends is one of those things. Same thing with like options to an extent. You really have to be disciplined when you're dividend investing, because you could really talk yourself into a worse overall company just because it has a slightly higher yield. And I think a lot of people in the dividend community still get absolutely destroyed by that. And I see it happen all the time. And I think I had a few people whispering in my ear, to kind of focus on like index funds are the way. And there's a route for that, right? And some people should just 100%, like especially if you're hands off, be invested in sort of index funds that, try to replicate the S&P 500, especially if you want to be very hands off. And then I see the part now where it's like, if you choose the right companies, your portfolio can outperform. Like I'm up massively compared to the S&P 500 the past 2 years. Back when I was only dividend investing, I was always dragging behind the S&P 500. It's because I didn't have a lot of big tech exposure. Not to say that big tech is the be all, end all, be all, but I thought I knew more than I did. And because of that, I was only investing in dividend stocks, and I was focusing on getting the pennies and not focusing on the long-term dollar appreciation. And so I try to tell people, man, that all the time, and it's gotten me blocked. It's gotten me made fun of. It's gotten me ridiculed. And in reality, I'm just trying to help people out. I'm not trying to be malicious by any means. Whenever I try to say something, I say things bluntly. I don't hide anything. And so sometimes it gets me into trouble. That bluntness of just being like, holding people accountable and trying to help sometimes can be a part where you become a leader of your own pack. And sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad, because sometimes I recognize it's like, well, I lost a friend today, or somebody that I, could have been a follower. But at the end of the day, it's like, if people don't want to actually receive that sort of credit, or not credit, if people don't actually want to receive that sort of help or guidance, if they think that they're, 6 months into investing and they know it all, then I can't wait till the market slaps them in the face, because I've been slapped in the face plenty of times, enough to know that I still don't know everything. There's plenty of people out there that probably are listening to me being like, this guy doesn't know shit. And you're probably right. In a lot of ways, I don't, right? I don't know anything about biotech. I don't know anything about a lot of different companies, technology and artificial intelligence, computers. I try my best. And I have surface level understanding on some of this stuff. But when it comes down to it, from an actual technical perspective about how this cloud stuff works, the back end engineering and data lakes and streaming of data, that stuff's all just over my head, man. I mean, I try my best, but it's just the way it is. So you have to recognize, once you get hit in the face a couple times, there's always going to be an avenue that you know absolutely nothing about. And there's a famous what is it, quote, or maybe it's just a famous like study, that the more you know, the more you recognize you don't know. Like PhDs will become more and more focused in on a particular subject, but they become less intelligent about a variety of other subjects, that they almost like pigeonhole themselves into a select group of actual knowledge, when I don't want to say being a jack of all trades is best, but you have to recognize that there's going to be risks that come out of nowhere, black swan events, just things that you can't quantify. Like the amount of times that people that are like, dude, invest in this company, there's no risk. I'm just like, Jesus Christ, here we go again. So there's always risk, right? Palantir, there's risk. Rocket Lab, there's risk. Dutch Bros, there's risk. Those risks may or may not be able to be quantified in a reasonable manner. And so that's why I always try to get back with people. At the end of the day, man, sorry for this little monologue, but I just always want to open it up with this. And I think this is probably one of the reasons why I lack a really strong followership. And shout out to the 59 of you, 60 of you that are here on the YouTube side, and a few people that are probably watching on X as well. But I'm not going to just sit up here, cheer you on, and be like, "Oh my God, you did so well!" Like, and watch you try to, like, I see so many people walking around like a squirrel, being like, "Oh, this person did this person," and I was there, man, guy. Like, trust me, like any new thing that was coming up, like covered call ETFs and this and that. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying you need to recognize when some of these things come on or come up, you don't just like drop everything and just squirrel or look immediately jump over to it. And that's what's part of the best thing about having a true good plan, which is an objective, time horizon, risk tolerance, how much capital you're going to be adding, and how active you want to be. Because at the end of the day, yes, that plan can morph. Like mine's morphed a billion times, right? And maybe dividends was a good place for me to start out and eventually grow into what I've been doing now. But I feel like so many people just go with what's popular. Like right now, everybody's really hoping that writing call options and wheeling is the way to go. And they're going to get themselves in trouble because nobody is properly telling them about the discipline. I've lost money myself, right? That's why I'm saying it. That's why I can honestly look across from you guys, look into this camera and say, watch out. And some people will tell you, oh, the risks aren't that bad. I know plenty of people that write options on dog shit companies, and still sometimes I get caught up in it. I'm not going to lie. And it's because you can see the amount of premium, and that premium can sometimes just be so fucking juicy. And you just sit there, you're like, I just got to do it. I got to do it. There's no risk. There's no risk. And I would say, if anything that I've learned, you might think about a specific subject, specific stock, specific company. The thing that I've recognized most, sorry, my phone's blowing up. The thing that I've recognized absolutely most so far, and this doesn't even have to go with specifically the stock market, but this is just in general, the ability for the normal human being to quantify risk is absurd. Now, I'm not saying you have to be like a scaredy cat, afraid to come out of your house, afraid to invest, afraid, like everything's risky, right? And Jim Rome talks about that quite a bit, right? Like people say, don't invest in the stock market because it's risky. Don't do this because it's risky. It's like everything's risky, right? But at the same time, you don't want to have negligent risk, right? We wouldn't have SpaceX without somebody taking on risk. We wouldn't have Elon Musk making Tesla without somebody taking on risk. We wouldn't have a lot of the companies throughout the globe without somebody taking on risk. But try your best to quantify that risk and like actually take it into account, because I see so many people say that they have very little risk tolerance, but at the end of the day they make an investment in some company that just, I don't know, is a fugazi, not real, straight up. And you might say, like, how do you know companies fugazi versus real? It's like, well, fortunate, I invested in a black box company that everyone thought was a fugazi, but I had hands-on experience using the product, that it changed the way that I work and everybody at my company works. So it made sense that it wasn't really just a black box company. But I see other people just investing in something because it sounds good, and it's tough, right? Like, who's to say? I'm not a rocket scientist. Who's to say that Rocket Lab is actually gonna be the number one? And for a while I was skeptical myself, and then I realized, like, looking at all the other parties, eventually I was thinking about getting out of space entirely, and then I looked at all the other parties out there and I said, these guys are executing, they're getting after it. They might be losing money, but they have the cash on hand to get themselves to where they want to be, and I'm willing to risk that, right? So anyway, just a little bit of a monologue. And I think the thing that I would say for today, the things to keep track of are always writing a good plan. That plan can change throughout time. My plans change throughout time. I've wanted to always be out of real estate. Now I've started to get into real estate because I recognize leverage is, what am I trying to say here? For me, what I recognize is I didn't really want to have a lot of debt. And then I recognized that in order to get yourself into a place where you can have a larger than normal net worth, you have to leverage debt, and in a good way, right? So I'm not saying like leverage yourself to the tits or to the top of your head and drown yourself. But for example, like my current loan to value ratio on my houses for my rental portfolio is 77%. And I would like to get that closer to 70%. But over time, I'll get there, but it's my first two homes. So it's kind of hard to say. But my total loan to value is about 80%. And that includes my personal residence. So I didn't put down the 20% of my personal residence. So that's why it's dragged down to 80% or up, I guess, in this case, because it's loan to value. But I still have, if you think about it, 23% equity in all those properties that I've invested in. And I think that that's okay. I would like to get it closer to 30, 35%, or like a 65 to 70% loan to value, so that I always have that kind of leverage going on, right? And I can always have something to borrow against to buy another property when I see it's fit. That's my hope, right? That's strategic, right? That's not risky. Can a house go belly up? Yes, but that's why you have multiple homes. And also that's why you have a little bit of a hedge, right? You're not, at that point, you're not leveraging yourself to a point where if things were to go belly up on one particular home, you're not going to completely drown. So anyway, just some thoughts there. Hot Mike, is that the actual Hot Michael Baskin? The Robert Lamb, as some may call him. The Robert Lamb. Michael, good to see you, my guy. I need to come and visit you. But anyway, I'm going to hop up to the top of the stream. 80 of you watching on YouTube, appreciate you guys. The amount of outpour that I got in a positive light from the stream that I did last week is what is actually causing me to do today's stream. I haven't had that much of a positive response on YouTube in, I would say, a couple years. And so to be able to get that sort of response from folks really highlighted, made my weekend straight up. And let me see. I can't tell you. I don't get as many subscribers, right? So I'm small time compared to Amit, and he deserves it because he puts in the time, right? But I did one live stream last week on September 7th. I guess it was on Saturday, 2 days ago. And from that, I got 62 subscribers. I haven't had a video get me 62 subscribers in 2 days, and I can't tell you how long. So it's a cheers to you guys, a testament. Hopefully you guys are continuing to get value out of the channel. Hopefully this is useful as always. And I appreciate anybody that sees some sort of value in this and shares it with a friend or family member. Because at the end of the day, that's why we're here, right? We're not here to tell you you're wrong. We're not here to say that dividend investing is bad. We're not here to say that you should only invest in Palantir. We're here to say, hey, everybody lives their own lives. Everybody has their own, timeline. You could be edging on retirement. You could be retired, and with that, you're going to invest completely differently than somebody that's just entering the workforce. But anyway, let's hop into some of these questions and have a good time. I'm not exactly sure how long I plan on going, but 20 minutes in thus far, and I'm having a good time so far. So is Rocket Lab still a buy? So I've always been in Rocket Lab knowing that it's a 1 or a 0 to me. And I know that makes it kind of like very simple And I see Adam here saying yes. I personally agree. I think that they're executing extremely well. They're ahead of most of their competitors from a small launch perspective and even a medium launch perspective. Even though they haven't launched any medium launch vehicles, not really many other people have either, other than SpaceX, right? So if you're talking about people like, oh, well, why don't I just invest in SpaceX? It's like, my guy, like, if McDonald's was the only fast food place, you would be bored out of your mind. This isn't communist Russia. This isn't the USSR. So, you don't just have one type of bread. You go to the store, you have white bread, you have wheat bread. You go to get a cell phone, you have Sprint, maybe it's just T-Mobile now, T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon, or you have Google Phone or Google Talk or whatever it is. You have so many different choices. So there's always going to be a number two in the space. And especially if somebody's executing. And the thing that's beautiful about Rocket Lab, and I won't harp on it too much unless you guys really ask questions later on, because I don't want to get stuck here for 20 minutes and miss a lot of your guys' questions. I'm here to answer your guys' questions. You have an obvious number two, right? And for a while, in terms of total rocket launches worldwide, Electron was the fourth most launched vehicle in the world. It's now the third, and it's number two in the United States. And it has been number two in the United States for like the past 4 to 5 years, by the way. But it just became the number third most launched vehicle worldwide for the past 12 months, which is absolutely phenomenal. And they're increasing cadence and increasing other avenues of revenue. Neutron, their medium launch vehicle, will hopefully be live in the next 12 months. That'll unlock a shit ton of revenue. You think about it, one launch of that is the equivalent of 6 or so launches from an Electron. And then you have HASTE, which is suborbital. I think that's going to have a huge Department of Defense implication. There's going to be a lot of revenue coming from that as well. So if you're talking, 5 to 10 years down the road, I think that this is going to be an extremely valuable company. They're going to have decent gross margins. I hope the gross margins continue to increase closer to the 40% range. But even if they stay, and I think they will with the constellation and stuff they're planning on coming out with, probably get closer to 50%, because once you launch it up into space, that cost is sunk, and you're really just banking on whatever revenues you get from whatever. And hopefully you can provide that service to not just one individual client, but hundreds of different clients, the same sort of data, and charge them all. So curious to see how that works out. But I'm a big fan of Rocket Lab personally. It's my largest conviction stock. I have about 19,500 shares. And I just wrote puts today at $5.50 for mid-October. It wasn't for the cash or income that I was going to get, but more so because I don't want to buy here in the sixes, because I have 19,000 shares or whatever with a cost basis like $4.80. And I personally just believe it's going to come down. But the thing that I was investing in, it was like a preferred share fund. And I was going to make like it was like 8 or 9% from that preferred share per annum. And I was like, if I'm going to do that, might as well write on Rocket Lab and write I think I got a quarter. Maybe it was 29 cents. It was 29 cents for October at $5.50. The return on it was like almost 4% or something like that for the month. And it wasn't necessarily about the 4%. It was because if it goes below $4 or $5.50, I'm probably going to buy more stock. And so it allowed me to kind of say, because I'm one of those dudes that's always invested, right? I don't have a lot of cash on hand. So it's like, if I have this in cash, I'm going to use it to buy something, and I don't want to buy something else. Honestly, I would know that I would kick myself if I didn't get to 25,000 shares of Rocket Lab, which is funny because somebody asked me my New Year's resolution going into 2024, and I said 10,000 shares of Rocket Lab. Well, I think within a couple weeks into January, I blew past that. But anyway, so I won't harp on that one too much. Google's one that I want to talk to you guys about a good bit, actually. I did an article on Google right after earnings. And for some reason, everyone still thinks that Google is going to zero. I do have a bone to pick with Google with how they're actually conducting their business from a political standpoint. And to be honest, I'm not that surprised. To be very blunt, Google's known for this, so I'm not really not really sure why I'm surprised. But at the end of the day, I think they should just kind of stick out of politics, kind of like what X and Facebook are doing this time around, and actually really appreciate the fact that Mark Zuckerberg came out and said we effed up, and yeah, we were manipulating elections. But just some of the common stuff, and same thing with Amazon too. Like, I don't think Amazon is much to an extent because they don't have as much from a search perspective impact as say Google does, but there's still biases in a lot of their things, and there's always going to be bias, right? Whether it's recency bias, um, you know, racial bias, political bias, whatever. There's always going to be biases. Just how you're brought up bias, ignorance bias, all these sorts of different biases. You can't get rid of it, but you can at least eliminate super obvious biases, and try to make yourself kind of neutral in some respects. And I think, unfortunately, Google doesn't do a good job there. But in terms of future growth, Google Cloud is an absolute monster. Let's see if I can pick up. Actually, let's just look at the article that I wrote, because I wrote some pretty good stuff in here. Don't want to toot my own horn, but I also have some good graphics in here. So for those of you guys, I think I posted this in the chat. So if you guys are interested, I wrote this last month, about exactly a month ago. So Alphabet grew 15% year over year, and their EPS, believe it or not, grew 31%. Some of that's their margins. Some of that's getting rid of fat in terms of the organization. Some of that is just Google Cloud, which previously was, the past couple of years, historically unprofitable, is now really starting to grow into a market of its own. So Google Cloud, specifically calling that out, grew 29% year over year, and is positioning itself as the strong third player behind Microsoft and AWS. And it also started its first dividend over the past few quarters as well. So that's pretty cool. The reason being for Google Cloud, so here you go. Here's Google Cloud over the past several years. You can see it's grown from like a 6 or 7% about 6 or so years ago to now being over 11%. And not only are they gaining market share, but the total addressable market for cloud is continuing to grow at rapid pace. And I had a conversation with somebody a couple of years back, and they said, Matt, if you think that cloud is getting to a place where it's leveling off, you have no idea. And they're right. I had no idea how quickly the total addressable market for cloud was continuing to grow. I think it was something like, I have it in here somewhere. It's insane. It's something like, shit. Here it is. No, that's not it either. Regardless, I just know that it's gonna eventually, I think, grow by like 2 or 3x by over the from 2023 to 2028. It was like something absurd. Let me type 2028 because maybe that's it. Yeah, here you go. One of the reasons I found focus on investing in Google is the potential for Google Cloud Platform to make a run at number 2 cloud service, and a total addressable market ever expanding closer to $1 trillion by 2028. Being the number 3 and growing in this space is okay, coupled with the dominant search and YouTube services growing at double-digit pace. The company businesses are cooking. And so I forget what it is now. I think it's like maybe 400 billion or 300 billion today. 2025, it's going to be even more so. But, if you're thinking about it, if the business itself is growing at 20% per annum, and these guys are not only getting 20% per annum in terms of revenue growth, but they're growing at more than that, then there you go. And you can just see all the other players losing market share. Microsoft continuing to gain, Google continuing to gain, Amazon slowly losing or staying rather flat, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But really, that was the one that I kind of really fell for when it came to looking at Google as a potential investment. And so I think originally I had this as like a $8 or something like that. Let me see. So I have it at like a $200 price target in the next 12 months. And originally, let me see. I thought I had an EPS in here somewhere. It's not important, but regardless, my EPS got chewed up. And the reason being it got chewed up is the following. Because even if you think that the top line is growing by a certain amount and the bottom line is growing by a certain amount, this is the real monster for why I think Google Cloud and coupling that with this thing that I'm about to mention is so crazy. So what you have here is the total share count for Google since 2019. So you can see that they started off with about 15 billion shares after they split, of course. Now all the way down to 12 and a half. So if you take that into account, let's just take 12 and a half divided by the 15. That's over 15% of the float. So they've bought about 17% of the float over the past 5 years. If you think about it, that's going to explode the underlying earnings per share. And so that's just a piece to kind of keep in mind when you're investing in great companies and they start to buy back stock. You know, yes, you want to see them. This is like, it's kind of a, how do I say it? It's a catch-22. You want to make sure that they're buying stock in a worthwhile business, one, but two, you want to make sure that they're not underinvesting in the underlying business either. So you want to make sure the business will continue to grow. The top line's growing. The thing that scares the crap out of me is people buying in companies that are doing share buybacks when they're not innovating. Their revenue is actually cannibalizing in on itself, and it's just not growing as a company. So it just makes me think a little bit. Some people just like, oh, but they're doing buybacks. It's like, that's great, but you know, buybacks really do well when the underlying profit of the company is also exploding, coupling that with buybacks, right? That's why AutoZone has been successful, because they've 6x their profit. Maybe it was 8x their profit, and they bought back like something like 80 something percent, 85% of the shares outstanding over the past 20 odd years. So you couple those two things together, the 6x in profit is not only astonishing, but buying back 85% of the float is, because then if you only have 85% of the float, then you know you get to multiply that by 7 or 8x from your original purchase, because they literally have decreased the shares by that amount. That your ownership position is increased by 7 or 8x, and you multiply this together, you get a 50x return compared to just the 6x that you got from profits, or compared to just the 7 or 8x just from share buybacks, right? And that's where you truly start to see this growth accelerating for Google, because just this alone, if you were to take the 1 divided by the 0.83, that's a 20% growth in the earnings per share just from buying back stock. So if you had $5 a share, now you have $6 a share in earnings just because you bought that stock. I think a lot of people neglect that, right? It's kind of one of those things, and it's very efficient too, because you don't have to pay taxes on that or anything like, because it's capital expenditures. Well, it's not really capital expenditures, but the company doesn't really have to pay taxes on the share buybacks, versus if you were to get dividends, you know, depending on if it's a Roth or what have you, you might have to pay the 15, 20% or even more, depending on their state taxes. So it might not necessarily be as efficient. So am I a fan of Google? Yes, I actually think that in the 140 range is actually pretty good. Now I'm kind of curious what I said for the EPS. So my initial EPS forecast in February 2024 is $7.50. I've adjusted it to be $8.20 in 2025, which is up 42% from 2023. The first half EPS was $3.78. And so I'm just assuming full year is about to be $7.50 on its own. So originally I was thinking $7.50 for fiscal year 25. Buybacks, Google Cloud, etc., really coming in. makes it so that we're actually going to get 750 in 2024. So adding 10% year over year gets you to $8.20. So I'm thinking $8.20 next year. So if, generally speaking, I don't like to look at price to earnings this year. I like to look at it on a forward basis. So you take, let's say, the 149 share price right now divided by the $8.20. You're looking at a forward price to earnings of about 18, which if you think about it in that respect, you know, an 18 price to earnings, especially with a company that's growing and is as strong as a Google, is warranted. So I think right now, I think everyone just thinks that for some reason Google's gonna lose their search position, but people have been saying that for a fucking decade at this point. It's like old and tired. If they haven't yet, then it's interesting. But anyway, I am half an hour behind in the chat, so let me get after this. I appreciate everybody, man. Carl, Tutomi, Mark, Chris C, Dougie Dallas, Adrox, what's going on, my guy? Long time no see. Glad to see you on here. Do you buy Palantir at these levels? We can. Do I talk about that right now? I personally wouldn't, but for me personally, but if you've never invested in the company and you want for something that's kind of guaranteed to, I would say 2 or 3x in the next decade, I would say potentially Palantir, but there's risk. It's currently overvalued by a significant margin right now, and I think that there's a lot of price discovery going on because of how important the company is for American prosperity, coupled with the AI opportunity that's in front of everybody. And I think people recognize that Palantir is really the only real company doing AI comparatively to what people thought Snowflake was doing, Databricks was doing. Not to say that Microsoft doesn't do AI and all that. Of course they do. But in terms of like digital twins and actual like living AI, like Skynet type shit, we're talking Palantir. And I don't think people fully recognized that until recently when the holes in some of the armor chain links that some of these people thought that they had started to blow up. Like these guys are actually capable versus some of these other organizations are just massively good sales organizations, just disguised as really good computer software companies. So I personally would not be buying. Personally, I would, I'd wait till the high 20s to buy again, but I could eat my words on that one. So what's up? You've been busy lately. Thank you. No, thank you, my guy. I love contributing to the community. You guys are absolutely phenomenal. You're a Rocket Lab Weekly guy, so you see me anyway. Appreciate that. Rocket Lab Week is a good time. Danielle McAdams, thank you. I've been seeing you more and more lately, so I really appreciate that support. It sounds exactly what a Russian agent would say. Yes, 100%. Where is my bearskin hat? I agree. Edwards, London. What is going on? FitBH, what's going on, my guy? Thank you for the continued support. You've been a lifelong supporter of the channel. The yield infection. I like that. I'm going to use that. I love how you fully shifted from the old days, dividends only, blended ETFs, and growth. Yeah, man, you don't know what you don't know, topical application of Palantir. I love that. Homer Kotz, what's going on? Another long subscriber. If you didn't have a position order, would you consider adding at these levels plus 20% down? Yes. Just went over that, and hopefully that was helpful for you. Do you consider holding just 1 or 2 stocks be stupid? I don't think so. I mean, if somebody actually has that true conviction and they've done as much due diligence and they have a long time horizon, then I think that they're okay, But I think if you were a little older and you have a lot of money, I would say yes, because at that point, like I heard somebody say something really good the other day, and I kind of agree with it to an extent. They say concentration is key to grow very rapidly, but diversification is to decay as slow as possible. Something like that, where basically if you diversify, then something can go up 5, 10x or something like that. And if it was a 1 percentage point of your portfolio, now it's 5 to 10%. It's like, it's great, but it hasn't really moved the dial much. Versus if it's 50% of your portfolio and it goes up 5 to 10, then you've 2.5 to 5x your total net worth. So, but at the same time, you could also go the opposite direction, right? It could go to zero, and then you have zero of half your portfolio. So you've 50% portfolio loss. So it really just depends on how much due diligence. I think the more I recognize how much work it takes to do true due diligence, I would say concentration can be beneficial to an extent. I recognize that I didn't invest enough in Palantir. I always knew that it was going to be rather well, but I'd been burned in the past by other companies. So even though I've used the product, I still thought that maybe I would potentially get burned, and I didn't want to lose my initial investment of, like, I guess my total cost basis for Palantir is what, like 4,500 times 13, like 60 grand. So 60 grand a couple of years ago was a lot of money to me. Now it's like, I'd be upset if I lost 60 grand, but I wouldn't be heartbroken. So, which is why on Rocket Lab, I'm like, I got to get it up to 100 grand invested, because if I lost 100 grand, would I be upset? Yes, but not as upset I would be as if I saw Rocket Lab absolutely take the fuck off. And I was sitting there like, you knew it. I can live with losing $100,000, right? Like, money comes, money goes. What I can't live with regret of having an opportunity that I think can be a 10x opportunity over a period of time. I'm not saying fucking tomorrow, because I think sometimes when people hear me say 10x, they think I mean tomorrow. But the 10x opportunity over the course of a decade or maybe even more. And I never took that opportunity, never took that leap. So I don't think investing in one or two stocks is a bit stupid. But for me, I have a decent amount of portfolio size now where a lot of my money is invested in the S&P, and I will make that bet into a couple small companies. So like, I continue to shrink the amount of positions in my portfolio, grow the S&P 500, and really focus my portfolio in Palantir, Rocket Lab, etc. And eventually I'll start shaving Palantir, and when I truly think that it's fully invested. And honestly, I've thought about trimming a little bit here, but at the same time, I'm like, I could just write covered calls and get a little bit of that extra. And to be frank, I think it's a very unique stock, right? It's going to be one that is always going to be perplexing to people. Why is it overvalued? Why is it overvalued? Why is it overvalued? And it might come back to reality, in bits and pieces here and there. But anyway, enough about that. Appreciate this, so we can just carry conversations everywhere, and it's not a time crunch. Appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. Health is wealth. Yes, it's something I need to get a little bit better at for sure. I'm a leader. I'm a lone wolf. I don't know about a leader. Got a question. How do you deal with the grind on the daily with work, life, and all? I find it hard to stay engaged every day. I like and love the community. It helps, but it's still hard. Sometimes you got to take a break, my guy. 100%. And I know you work really hard. So, give yourself some grace. I struggle with it as well. But to me, it's a hobby, so fortunately for me, talking about stocks, talking about the investment community, like, this is my hobby. And it's one of the reasons why I started the YouTube channel in the first place. Cause I started investing 10 or so years ago. Actually, it was more like 12 years ago, I guess. And I wanted to talk to family members about it. And wanted to talk to friends about it. And it was just, they weren't really interested at the time. So I started the YouTube channel in case, at the time it wasn't a lot of money. It was like 50 grand. I was like, if I die, somebody's got to learn how to use this. So I figured I'd put content on YouTube, and if I died, maybe somebody would watch those videos and recognize, like, maybe Matt has a plan for all this, and it's documented to an extent here on the internet. And then eventually got to a point where other people were listening. Like, I actually was surprised. Like, I was making it for myself and documenting, and I was a little more timid. Definitely not. It's like didn't know how to speak into a microphone, and it's kind of whispering and super sight. But now I try to enunciate and talk with a little bit more prominence, and definitely has helped with the stage fright to an extent, to talking to large groups of people. And people actually started watching and commenting and providing feedback. And I learned that it wasn't just me that I was trying to help educate and document for, but to help others as well. And I might not necessarily be speaking the right thing, but I'm at least getting people to think and talk and engage. Anyway, owning Canadian stocks is akin to having a slap fetish. Ouch. Yes, it is 1/10 of the United States, and a lot less from a GDP perspective. Sometimes you just have to invest with your heart and conviction. Wealth is health. Modbox, what's going on? Mr. Sargent, I've seen you around a billion times. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. It means a lot to me. Space Ghost, yeah, I'm not here for your rocket science takes, here for your financial advice. Always good to have a reasonable voice to listen to, especially when the stock is experiencing volatility. Well, I can't give financial advice as of yet. I will eventually take over, not take over, Jesus. I will eventually take the Series 65 and hopefully become a financial advisor, but today is not the day. Until then. Ignorance is bliss. Sometimes it is, my guy. 100%. The real deal, Trent. Much appreciated for the continued support, my guy. The biggest risk is not investing. That is what Jim Rome said. Wait till he said, basically, I think what he said, I'm trying to paraphrase it here. He said, if you think investing is risky, wait till they hand you the bill for not investing. 100%. Mike K, what's going on, guy? Being authentic is the shit. Yeah, man, I tell people this all the time. I'm like, I'd rather lose somebody out of my life. I'd rather upset somebody and be true to myself, because I don't care who you're talking to, right? The way I look at it is every day, and I do this every day, and so do you. I wake up, I go into the bathroom. Obviously, I go to the bathroom first, use the toilet. But then afterwards, walk right to the sink, look at myself in the eyes, give myself a head nod or something like that, and then I go take a shower. Or if I don't do that before I take the shower, I definitely do it after the shower when I'm putting in contacts, I'm brushing my hair. You're the only person that you are fighting for, right? And the only person you need to answer to is sitting across from you in the mirror every single time, or standing across rather. And, I've been using that for the past 5 to 10 years, and I can get into technical arguments with people, fundamental arguments about a lot, but as long as I'm true to myself, and it's not to say don't listen to anybody else. And it's not at all what I'm trying to say. Listen, hear somebody, maybe they'll change your opinion, but I've had so many times people try to sway who I am and challenge my ethics. But I know how I was raised. I know, what I believe and for what I believe. And maybe I don't have the diversity of thought, and that's why it's important to listen. And I might not have the diversity of what that person might have gone through, what experiences they've had, different upbringing, etc. But listen to that and still be like, okay, that's interesting. And you can agree to disagree, or you can actually have somebody be like, oh, that's actually a reasonable answer. It could be that. I didn't think about that. I was so close to rush to my judgment based off of my biases and my experiences that I didn't even think about that. But at the end of the day, sometimes people just have a complete lack of, in my opinion, ethics and judgment. And you sometimes just have to stick to your guns. You got to do what you got to do and be the very best version of you. I love that. Bro, you're rich and you're young. That's amazing. Not that rich, and I'm not that young anymore as well. Why are we talking about squirrels? That's a good question. Really good question. Foundation, when you're young. Love that. All in on MSTR. That's the thing, man. I did write on MSTR, and I'm okay with owning Some shares of MicroStrategy, I actually think Michael Saylor is a really smart guy, but I got over anxious. I saw the premium was too hot. And I'm just going to be blunt with you guys, man. I mean, I don't think I was close to like losing the portfolio or anything like that, but it got the heart pumping a little bit when Bitcoin went down to 48,000 about a month ago. And it didn't make me feel comfortable. So it always gives you that. Sometimes you need a little bit of those to recognize, like, here's the line. I was close to it. I don't want to get near that line again. And you adjust, right? Luckily, I made a shit ton of money in August. I think I've told you guys, but it got a little close for comfort. And luckily, everything turned out okay. But it could have easily kept going the opposite direction because I'm not a fortune teller. Monty Deuces is risky, but the reward limitless. Love that. Exactly. I'd rather have a core group of a bunch of people that actually care. I don't necessarily care if people value my content or not, but as long as they're learning something, that's all that matters. Invested in Celsius and P. Yeah. Some people jump on the bandwagon. Touch and feel the product. I'm gonna touch you, Michael. They aren't building more land. I like that. And for anybody, I do know Michael personally. That's a bad joke. Sometimes my jokes can turn very inappropriate. The hands-on Palantir helped me give confidence. There you go. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Greetings and salutations, Richard. Thank you for being a good subscriber for a long time, my friend. Really, really appreciate that. Hot Mike, man, I really do appreciate you, guy. I really do. Mike K, Michael Baskin in the flesh. Thoughts on SPYI? I don't like it. I don't know if you left. I don't know if you asked this last time. Not a fan, man. It's been around. Let's look at it again because you weren't here, I guess, when I went through it last time. Or you did, and you just want me to hear if I say the same thing 2 times in a row, which is fine. Sometimes you got to do that. So it's been around. Yeah. So let me share. Actually, let me move this here and then share. So the thing I don't like about this, and I guess it all depends on, and like I said, this is for me. Maybe it works out for you, but I would just double check. So this is the 5-year chart. So it went live in August of 2022. What was really down in August of 22 comparatively to recent times? And let's look. August of 22, June, August of 22. The S&P was at 427. We're now at, let's just say, 545. So 545 divided by 427. The S&P is up 27% since then. And then you have SPYI. Keep in mind, that's not including the dividend, right? You have SPYI that is pretty much flat over the past year, slightly negative over the past year, 2 years. I mean, unless this yield is like 20% per annum, I just don't see the reasoning. And it says I don't believe that yield. I think it's probably more than that. But yeah, I would just be cautious. Sometimes, like, and if you guys want to know what like my favorite S&P 500 covered call ETF is, it's actually this XYLG, and it's not gonna outpace the S&P 500. It will not. But what it will do is it'll somewhat match, and it'll how do I say this? It'll get half the returns from a principal perspective. So you can see here at the bottom, so around the same time, August 2022, let's just call it 26. So 26 to 31. So 31 divided by 26, you got a 19% return. So not nearly as much as, let's say, the S&P 500 from that time frame. But I know this thing yields about a 4 to 5%. Where is it at? It says 1% now, but I know this yields about 4 to 5%. So, in the same sort of time period, maybe a little longer, you would have at least gotten 4% or so in dividends per annum, and actually kept up a little bit better with the S&P. And the reason why is because the SPYI, I don't know 100%, but I'm anticipating they do a call spread on it, probably super close to the money to make a little bit of extra income. This only writes covered calls on half of the position. So if you were to have, let's say, 100 shares of SPY, it only writes covered calls on half. That's a bad analogy because you can't write covered calls on 50 shares, but you know what I'm saying. So it allows the other half to increase uncapped versus the other half is capped. So you do get a little bit of that income. It's, twice to 3 times as much as the normal S&P 500 from an income perspective, but you are capping some of your gains. So in really good running months, it'll be tapped up. I mean, we could just do another example. Let me pull it up first. SPYI versus SPY. Let's just do Google Finance. SPYI. And then let's go to compare. Where's compare here? I'll compare to SPY and XYLG. Not saying XYLG is the best thing of all time, but let's see. Let's just do over the past year, huh? So obviously SPY is going to be the best performer because obviously it doesn't yield as much. But then you have XYLG, which is yielding about half. This is 1 year time horizon, by the way. So XYLG is up at least 11%. So you can see over the past year, the S&P, which I did SPY, is 22%. XYLG is up 11 point something percent and yielding. So, yielding higher dividend as well. So it's a little bit more than half the returns. But I guess if you're looking for that income piece, you can have that. And then you have SPYI, SPYI, and it's flat in one of the best returning markets in quite some time. You can see the problem that I have with XYLG, though, is it returns half. So I know this isn't like for like, but just imagine. So it returns half, but then it almost replicates the downside 100%. So in the long term, it might outpace, as we've seen here, but it'll probably be very sawtooth in that respect. So you kind of have to be careful with some of these covered call ETFs. You're one of the 62 subs. Thanks, my guy. When am I going to start my own fund? Man, when I pass the Series 65, that's the hope. That is the hope. My guy, GC, what is going on? Wanted to thank you for lunch the other week. It was a phenomenal time. Need to do it again soon. Yeah, Finance Junkies left a hole. Yeah, unfortunately. Does FJs mean what I think it does? I don't think it does. Hopefully somebody answered that later on. Johnny Utah, another long-term subscriber. Nicholas Ayan. Don't know you, but what's up, my guy? Thanks for jumping in. Would I be comfortable managing other people's money? It depends. So I would be comfortable. I do want to start a fund for sure. Sorry, not a fund. That's not the right term. I would love to run people's money. And by run money, I mean manage it. And what I mean by that is I would basically just guide from an investment advisor perspective what they're investing in. And a lot of it would probably just be S&P 500. I have a lot of people that are like, Matt, like, tell me what to do. And I would just be like, give me 20 grand. I'm going to invest in the S&P 500 for you. Let's get you set up direct deposit. A couple $100 a month. And I think that's the hardest part is like everyone wants to know what to invest in, but they never feed the portfolio. Like, this is a prime example. It's like you don't buy a house plant, and then never water it, right? Because it'll die. It's the same sort of thing with like an investment portfolio. It's like, it's not going to die, especially if you put in the S&P 500, but like it's going to grow really slow. And like you have to supercharge that shit. You got to feed it. right? Just like a kid, like you want your kid to grow. You stop feeding your kid, they'll eventually die. But if they start nibbling and eating the wrong things, they're not going to grow nearly as quickly. You got to feed it. You got to give it that juice. So anyway, but yeah, I've thought about it, and if people are interested, after I have them invested in SPY and maybe some other things, they want some dividend income, you can give them some of that. But the majority of it's probably just going to be the S&P 500 and or VOO most likely, if they don't want me to, because it's going to be hard to write options on other people's portfolios. But if they wanted me to have like and run into a fund that I would like to make, then I'd probably just run it how I run my own portfolio, which is majority SPY and then focus in on a couple small positions. So I'd probably run like 70 or 75% of the money into SPY, write covered calls, keep that money kind of going, and then a small portion of the portfolio and like 5 to 10% position sizes would be in high conviction bets. But we're talking years down the road, and many people probably don't even want to run money with me anyway. But eventually, that's what I plan on doing. Very happy to see you on YouTube. You and PPC Young were the original finance channels that actually got me investing back in the day. Wow, that hits home. Like, I'm not just saying that. PPC Ian is one of the guys that I was watching when I was really getting started as well. So that really helps me. That really hits home. That's pretty cool. I'm starting to tear up a little bit. Much appreciated with that one. That one's really cool. When does the demand for space go beyond satellites? Are you talking Space Wars? Star Wars? Just kidding. But I think that's what you are referring to. I think we're getting there, man. Really, I think the Department of Defense is really getting there with the Space Development Agency, and I think we're going to see more and more of that in the next 5 to 6 years with what they're kind of getting planned. Hey, Matt, how will you invest in the market if you're 52-year-old and have plenty of rental properties and only investing for 2 years? Like, do you mean you're only putting money in the market for 2 years, or you've only been investing total in the stock market for 2 years? Curious about that one. Like Aerosmith, stream on, stream on. I like that. I like that, Dimitri. Thank you for being a continued long-time subscriber to the channel. Ahmed is a machine. He is, and he talks fucking super fast, like a Gatling gun. I do consider Rocket Lab to be a defense sector play. Oh, yes, I still say Google. I'm sorry, y'all. Will you travel to see Neutron's first launch? I do plan on it. Meta's been extremely impressive with their turnaround. I agree. Google needs to learn from Starbucks. Yeah, go woke, go broke. Cardone Capital or invest by yourself? It really depends, man. Like whatever you're trying to achieve. I've had good experience with Cardone Capital. It's very hands off. So I get my money in my bank every month. It's up to like $78 or something. I put in $15,000. But getting $78, it's been slowly growing over the past few years. And the properties themselves have appreciated very well. From the K1s that we receive, we see the current estimate of what the value of the property is. So I wouldn't be surprised within the next 5 or so years, considering some of them are actually going to start going off interest only loans. And for some of you guys might be like, interest only, what kind of commercial loans are very different than residential loans. So you can structure them in a lot of different ways, depending on, once again, what you're looking for. Are you looking to fix and flip something? Are you looking to hold it forever? What type of property is it? Sometimes people buy a property just for interest only to cash flow, use that cash flow to renovate the property, get the rent roll up. So they might do interest only for 5 years, get the rent roll up. So by years 3, 4, and 5, the rent roll doubles or doubles, probably a bad term, goes up 30%. And then you increase the value exponentially, because if you're able to keep your cost basis at the same price and your rent goes up 20, 30%, and you're able to capture that in terms of net income, then you're going to massively expand the value of that property. Not because property in commercial real estate goes up by like what someone's willing to pay for it. They're buying it based off the cash flow. So once you go more than 4 or 5 units, you start buying stuff based off cash flow rather than like it just being a house and a good location. And location and stuff plays a piece into it. But for example, if it's like in the hood and you have crack houses around, somebody's probably not going to pay you a 4 cap for the house, meaning like a 25x multiple for the cash flow in the house. But if you're living in like central downtown New York, somebody might pay you a 4 cap for that because it's prime real estate and it's very competitive and it's a trophy property, very low risk. Downtown Manhattan, let's say, where you have a lot of insurance companies, finance companies, all wanting to be in some of the best prime real estate in the world, you're going to pay a premium for it. So you're going to pay a 4 cap. But going back to Cardone Capital, I think it all depends. I like it. If I had a lot of cash laying around, I'd probably do it again. It also depends on what he's investing in. A lot of the things that I've heard and seen, they do really, really well. They do really, really well. Where do you invest if everything seems overvalued? It depends. Overvalued is a very, to me, short-term term, right? Like Palantir, for example, overvalued today, super undervalued if you're looking 10 years down the road. Rocket Lab, also overvalued today because it doesn't make any money, but 10 years down the road for its potential, you could say Google's fairly valued at 18 times earnings. But if you look 5 years down the road, it's severely undervalued. So there's always going to be places within the market where you can find value. But honestly, if you think everything seems overvalued, right now you could still get a CD for 5% yield. Lock it in. Money market account still pays 5% right now. Lock it in. Some AWS competition. That's right. Chris Adams, that analogy, the more you know, the less you do, comes from the fact that more you understand about everything, it opens up a floodgate of new things that they have yet to then understand. In other words, you know nothing. You don't even know what you know nothing. Exactly. Agreed. Yes, EPA of 820 for that Google article. Exactly. Heinze, what's going on? Let's see. Great neutron pad just shared by Sir Peter Beck. Let's see. Don't throw me exciting things midstream, my guy. Papa Pete. Oh Lord. Oh Lord. For those who don't know what LOX is, that's liquid oxygen. Wow. It's getting there, man. It is getting there. Getting there for sure. What stock is this? I don't know what you're referring to because I'm so behind in the chat, y'all. I'm trying to catch up. Yeah, Google's cheap right now. Wall Street's selling off Google like Google's going bankrupt. Yeah, I'm not exactly too sure what's going on. It was weird that Amazon's antitrust lawsuit is until 22, but Google's is happening now. Just the legislation cycle, my man. The bear case. Yeah, Google's always going through lawsuits. Could be in Europe, could be here. Heinze, my guy. Bucket list guy, new sub. What's going on? Much appreciated. I like your image. Good old Homer. Thoughts on IRDM? Is that Iridium Space? I don't know much about it, to be honest with you. Iridium Communications. I don't know much. I've had a couple people ask. It's down 3% today. Down rather tough. Down rather tough over the past 5 years. 44%. How much you want to bet they have zero cash on hand? Let's see. How much you want to bet they have zero cash on hand, and that's 100% why they're going to zero? Sorry, going to zero is ignorant. That's an ignorant statement. I shouldn't have said that. I apologize. Let me get the... Am I losing it? Let's go to the SEC. Filings, 10Q. Save some cash. Okay. So let's see. 152,000 by operating activities, but what is that? Depreciation. Okay, so 52 million. Just normal net income. Accounts receivable. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. 27 million in capex. Acquisition of a company. So if you took that out, then they'd be okay. They'd only be down about like 125 in terms of cash flow, but then they have, let's see, payments on long-term debt. So dividends. What's wrong with this? Oh, sorry. I was looking at the balance sheet and stuff. Where's like the information on this? Okay. So it pays like a 1.9% dividend. Sorry, I was just like looking in here. Let's see. And it doesn't look like they grew much year over year, like 3.5%. Okay. So 53 million. First half of the year, they're 3 billion. Interesting. So, I mean, if they actually come out with $100 million a year, and they're trading at a PE of about 30, 37, it says. I guess it all just depends on if these flow through. Like, is it, will it actually generate a trailing 12 months of 100 million, or is it, I guess that's my question that I would ask myself and try to look at, like, is this going to be consistent or is it going to be very wavy? For now, it looks pretty inconsistent. So I'd have to, I don't know, off the cuff. I mean, it doesn't seem too crazy. I'm wondering why it dropped so much, though. Was there a bunch of contracts that were supposed to come through that just never did? Or is it just the fact that people realize that maybe it's not going to be as profitable as once thought, and they're paying two in advance for what they were getting? I don't know. I've heard the name bounced around, but I don't know much about it. The worst vacation is selling your winners to buy the loser. Email me soon. Sorry for the delay. Hey man, no rush. You know, I'm just hanging out. I'm just that guy. Started a Rock Lab position on Friday. Hopefully you did it on your own accord and you recognize the value, not because some random guy in Texas told you to. I'm thinking you're going to long a semi other than NVIDIA, really like ARM or Micron. I don't work that hard, to be honest. Yeah, man, used to be dividend journey. No longer. Not much dividends now. I think I'll get like 18,000 in dividends this year if I'm lucky. Everyone can agree. Everyone's been on journey to Lambo. I 100% agree with that. Trust but verify. Yes, still have about 1,500 or 1,600 shares of TQQQ. Never sold. Just straight covered calls. Was up really good middle of this year. And obviously I'm down a bit, but I might actually start selling puts on that. Actually, I was supposed to start looking at that today. If that isn't on a t-shirt and the name of a stream is that people are missing out. Not that rich and not that young. There you go. I like that. I agree. It should be on a shirt. Watching from beginning, pumped to see another stream. Yeah, I got really good feedback from the last one, man. So I'm like really, it really fired me up. I kept getting notifications like another subscriber, and I was just like flabbergasted at the response. So like holding 80 people on the stream right now, 75 even down to it's a lot of fun. Hot Matt, I'm back at it, my guy. All is great. Been buying anything last week? I sold puts on Rocket Lab, the 5.5 for 29 cents. So that was fun. Can you talk about your buy and hold TQQQ thoughts if possible? Can you go over the bull and bear cases? Sure. The bull case is that over the next decade, the NASDAQ 100 continues to perform like it has over the past, let's say, 15 years. Even if it performs about a quarter as well, then the triple levers will compound on itself and grow massively. The bear case is it goes to zero and it just goes sideways. My thought process was when I invested in it, initially it was, let me see. I'm not sharing my screen anymore, right? Where is it? I thought I had my sheet open. Okay, I do. Originally, it was like a couple percentage point position in the portfolio. It was. But now it's kind of grown into a percentage point or two more than that. So originally it was like a 3 to 4% position in the portfolio. Now it's like a 5 or 6% position in the portfolio. And some of that's gains. So I'm up on both the positions I have, some of the Roth, some of the individual brokerage account. But my thought process is one, I'm making pretty good money writing covered calls on it. That's not why I have it. But my thought process is over the course of, let's say, 20 years, 10 years, even though there's likely to be some decay in there and some ups and downs, when the times go really, really well, the value of TQQQ explodes massively. So from October to like June, July of this year, TQQQ went up like 200 something percent, maybe more, because of the abruptness. And this is the problem with TQQQ sometimes. When it goes down like a percentage or two slowly, it's not that bad. But when the market decides to take huge chunks, it really hurts TQQQ. So it has the exact opposite effect on the downside. So like, for example, it's not uncommon to be down, 5 or 6% in a day using TQQQ, but it's also not uncommon to be up 5 or 6% in a day on TQQQ. But if that happens over the course of some time. Like for example, in 2022, TQQQ went from like $80 a share down to like 18 or 19 bucks. So the thought process is like, if 3 to 4% of the portfolio ends up being, let's just say, a 10x or something like that, or 20x, then it's going to move the portfolio pretty substantially, and I could sell it, put it into SPY, something like that. Or if it goes to zero, it goes to zero. To me, it was more of like a long-term bet on it, which to me, it was worth the gamble. They're opening a Dutch Bros in South Bay. Should be good. Going live every day. No, I wish I had the time. Yeah, Dutch Bros, I think it's going to be a good one, personally. The Dutch Bros in League City has been built since March, but hasn't opened yet. Well, hopefully it opens up. We had one being built, and it actually went up really quick, and it's always packed. Rummy, what's going on, my guy? Melanie, I agree, man. Bros is a good time. Started investing only in the market for years. Didn't know anything about the stock market before. Now I'm trying to learn what to do. If you're just trying to be super hands-off, I don't know how much hands-on or hands-off you want to be. But if you're trying to just be super hands-off and you're 52, I mean, what's your time horizon? Like, are you going to need this money? Is this money, like, that's the thing. Like, you got to think about it in a different way. I would say if you could figure out your objective for the money, your time horizon for the money, your risk tolerance for the money. Like, if you lose all of it, are you going to be pissed? That's something to consider. Or are you trying to like swing for the fences, right? How much capital are you going to add to this? Is this the only, let's just say you have 200 grand, it's going to be the only 200 grand, and you want it to be sacred retirement money, and you have no other money, you're going to invest it completely differently than if you're like, I already got a $10 million portfolio over here. My real estate pays for everything. I got 200 grand. I'm trying to either like swing for the fences or lose it and get $10 million swinging for some random stock that may or may not pan out, or lose it or break even. You're going to have completely different conversations depending on that, Good evening, gents and ladies. Call me Curtis. Changing up the name, my guy. Changing up the name. Do you wrap brisket in foil or butcher paper to get it over stall temp? Every brisket I've done, I've never done a full brisket, actually. I've only done the point, because it's lean, or sorry, it's not leaner, it's more moist. And to be honest, I didn't really have too much of a problem with the stall. Kind of just ran right through it. You wrap yours at 160. There's nothing wrong with that. I really don't think so. Rocket Lab for the win, my guys. Curtis, thank you for the $5 super chat, my guy. Much appreciated. You always helping out, and I really appreciate that. You don't always have to do that, but it's appreciated. It goes into the portfolio. You know me, I don't really have, other than like my Tahoe in my house, I don't really have much. I do like nice cigars. So yeah. Iridium isotope does make x-rays. Thoughts on ELF? I haven't looked at it. Dead tech. Heard it here first. Very, very niche tech. Okay, there you go. Which, speaking of this, I was like thinking the other day, I was like, maybe I invest in Planet Lab or Black Sky, and I was like, you know what? I was like, why am I going to dilute it, right? I know Rocket Lab is a great performing company. It's going to perform really well. Like, why jeopardize that? That's why I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that to myself. Dying brought out of bankruptcy. Okay. Derek York, what's going on, my guy? Much appreciated for you stopping by. Can you talk about your strategy on selling calls? What do you look for when selling calls and puts? So I do it very differently than I'd say some people. Like TJ likes to wheel. I don't think wheeling is bad. It's a technique, but the typical wheel technique, I don't know if it was invented by the God, I'm gonna mess up the name. Not Trade Cherry. Tasty Trades. They have the cherries as as their symbol. So Tasty Trade does a good job, but the thing is they have very strict rules about how far you sell. It's 45 days out. You sell at the 0.3 delta. When you get a certain profit, you take profit. If there's a certain amount of time left, you roll out again. Things of the like. To me, I don't want my shares to get executed. Like Tasty Trade, I feel like it's a good strategy, especially if you're just trying to make money, like cash flow. To me, I like the stocks I'm investing in, and they're my golden geese, right? I don't want to kill my golden goose. So the way I look at covered calls is generally far out of the money from a covered calls perspective. I'm talking like 5 delta. So I'm talking unless the stock goes on a massive run, we're not going to have any problems. And so I try to time it when it's been on a pretty decent streak, write the covered call. Depending on what company, like Palantir, I generally write weeklies. TQQQ, I generally write weeklies. Stuff that's more volatile. Something that takes a little bit longer to move, higher market cap, larger market cap. Your Amazons. Excuse me. I don't know why I'm such a yawny baby today. Google's, Amazon's, etc. SPYs. I generally will write. Even SPYI I do weekly because it can change on a dime. But Amazon's and Google's I write monthlies generally. At generally the 5 delta. So super far out of the money comparatively to what most people would write. You might be like, oh, but you're only going to get a couple percentage points per year. It's like, well, that's really what I'm going after, right? For my portfolio style, I want long-term price appreciation in the stocks I'm investing in, inclusive of the SPY index fund. And the way I look at it is, if I look at things like a 4% withdrawal rate or a 3% withdrawal rate, and I'm able to invest in the SPY and maybe a few other things to get my total dividend yield for the portfolio to 1.5%, then all I need is another 1.5% from writing options to be able to make whatever sort of income I want for the year. So if you think about it in that perspective, it allows you to, and I think the problem is a lot of people, they try to go for like 1% per week, and that's when they get burned. And then they're sitting there trying to roll forever. And, it's just, I think that strategy is just not for me. To me, it's like, let your companies do their thing. If you invest into the right companies, they'll pay you out, and you can get a little bit of covered call income on the side. From a writing puts perspective, that's completely different than writing calls, because I'm talking about now, because my calls generally, very few of the time, I actually want my shares to get called away. And if I do, then I'm not writing at the 5 delta, right? I'm writing at like at the money, sometimes slightly in the money, or slightly out of the money, because I'm like, it gets called away at $50, gets called away at $50. But most of the time, I would say I'm writing, like, for example, Stag Industrial. Stag is one that I'm kind of like, if it gets called away, it gets called away at $40. I would probably take that money and put it into the SPY. So much so that I've almost just closed out the trade altogether and been like, yeah, I'll lose $100 on the trade because I'm kind of underwater on the one covered call that I wrote. It's like, okay, I lose $100 on that, but I have the other 20 or 30 grand, I forget how much it is, to put in the SPY. I just keep writing cover calls on SPY because that's a decent income generator for me. but selling puts is different because it's when you think the company is perfectly valued. So I'm not always writing puts on a company. In fact, I have very few puts on right now. Celsius I have puts on, MicroStrategies I have puts on. What else do I have puts on? NEXT I had puts on. I put on some for Rocket Lab. My NXT's got exercise, so I actually bought some shares for NEXT. But my Rocket Lab, I sold some puts because at certain prices, I'm going to buy the stock, right? And so, like I said earlier, if I have cash on hand, I'm going to end up spending it on buying stocks. So if I use that as a cash secured put, I'm at least locking away that money. And it could very well be that when it comes time to actually execute it, I don't actually end up doing it. But it's nice because sometimes the stock gets put to you and you were going to buy it anyway. So like NEXT, the stock got put to me. Not a big deal because I plan on holding NEXT for the long term. The problem with selling puts that I see a lot of people get trapped in is they see how much premium you can make in certain stocks, and then they don't think about the total risks of something, and they overdo it. They write way more than their buck can cash. And the problem is like when a stock is so far out of the money, they'll give you a lot of margin. But as soon as you start getting closer to the money, that margin starts to disappear. And so people will write basically to the point of being at the point where they won't give you any more margin, but the market's going up and up and up and up. And writing puts obviously is a very bullish income strategy when the market's going up and to the right. But as soon as the market starts coming down and to the right, depending on if you're too aggressive on your margin or not, then they're going to make you start liquidating stuff. So especially for writing on margin, you don't necessarily have to do things on margin. You can do cash secured, but I think a lot of people end up thinking like, well, I'm invincible. My portfolio is already so big. They have a couple good wins, and next thing you know, they think that they can do whatever the hell they want. And unfortunately, it gets them in trouble. So with respect to writing the puts piece, I would just only write it on companies you actually want, right? So for me, most of the time I'm writing on Palantir. I don't have any on Palantir at the moment because I'd probably wait till it gets into the high 20s again. I have some on SoFi right now at $7 because I'd buy under 7. I might let it expire because it's like 7 contracts or something for $7. So I was like $4,900. It is what it is. And I was like, I think I got something absurd for the premium. So I think I wrote it for January. So I think I got like 60 or 70 cents or something like that. So I was like, if this executes, I'm buying it at $6.30 or something like that, $6.40, something absurd. I'm like, who wouldn't want 700 shares of SoFi at $6.30 something cents? So I was like, that's an easy no-brainer. What else was there recently? I think I have one contract on Dutch Bros or something like that. Really, it's just to like top up on small positions. SPYI, I don't have any on right now. I've thought about doing one on Google. In fact, is it raining? I think it's raining. I think I might have executed one on Google at 125, I think, for next month. Or maybe it was after earnings. So there's that. So that's a good one. I mean, I can go into further depth in the future, but that's a good overview. I mean, I don't try to write at the money covered calls. I like to keep my golden geese. So you appreciate me and always watching, although you don't always comment. Joe Rogan's nipple, I appreciate you. I've seen you around a little bit. It's always a good time. Rocket Lab Weekly, Cash Flow Chronicles, and all your guest appearances on the shows. Appreciate all that I do. Appreciate that, man. Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like I do more on other shows than I do on my own channel, which I think I need to pull back a little bit. Not to say that it's bad what I do over there, but I need to give you guys more love. And having 100 people in here, that's love. Like, I can't tell you the last time I pulled 100 people into a room. So I really appreciate it. And if you guys aren't subscribed, please take the opportunity to do so. Think about it. It's completely free. You get to chat with us. I'm trying to catch up to the chat. We'll see. Dutch Bros is different. So, I mean, some people like that really burnt roasted flavor. I don't even know if it's roasted or if it's burnt. Some people might tell you it's burnt from Starbucks. Generally, you don't go to Dutch Bros for coffee. It's more espresso, and they'll mix it with different types of creams or milks or whatever. Their energy drink is absolutely phenomenal. That's the thing I like most. They have a sugar-free energy drink at Dutch Bros. They don't do made-to-order food, so if you're looking for like a muffin top or like a granola bar, they're absolutely phenomenal. But they only have 3 different types of muffin tops, and they have 1 granola bar flavor. Best granola bar I've ever had, by the way. And I've had it at different locations. Sometimes when I'm just fiending for like carbs in the morning, I'll just get that, and it's very filling and very delicious. The lemonades are very different. So they have everything. I think that they have more flavor choices than you do at Starbucks. A lot more customization maybe that you could do at Starbucks than you can do than Starbucks as well. So it's just different. The vibe is different. Starbucks, I feel like every time you go there, it's more woke. Dutch Bros, it's like actually, back, it feels like you're, I don't want to say back in the 50s, because it's not like going to Sonic or something where they have the drive-through, like windows and stuff. They bring it out on roller skates. I'm not talking about that. I was talking about, people actually genuinely care about you stopping by. And Starbucks, I feel like, I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I say that the Starbucks that we have at the office that I work at is phenomenal. The women that work there are phenomenal. Generally, we don't have any men working the stand. They mostly work the cafeteria. But the women that work the Starbucks are phenomenal. I'd call them out, but I don't know if they want me to shout their name out. Great women. And then, but it's just like every time I go off site for a drink, like Starbucks or something like that, or I'm going into work and I need caffeine and I don't want to get it from the downstairs coffee bar, then I just feel like I'm going into the Twilight Zone in a completely different dimension. This is not for me. Too woke. But yeah, Dutch Bros, I guess we'll see when it gets to the East Coast, because it'll have more competition from Dunkin' Donuts as well. You're live again, didn't tell you? Well, white people, you got money, don't spend it. That's what good old Kanye would say. Hello from Japan. What's going on? Ahad, what's going on? Rocket Lab mission to Mars delayed. Yes, that is Blue Origin. Jeff Bezos is doing. You've only done a brisket flat. Well, flats are pretty good too. They're more lean than that. Poor man burnt ends. I like that. That's the pork, right? Still need to do that. My smoker, I left it outside without the cover, so my smoker is completely dead. And it was a cheapo smoker in general, too small. So I might put it out front, see if somebody wants it. So if you're in Houston and you know how to fix smokers, then feel free to stop by. But yeah, I'm probably going to order a different, higher quality one and actually cover it this time, because I think I let the rain get to it too much. When's your wrench? You already have a wrench, guy, I think. To get to 1,000 a month of dividends to pay for your 1968 Charger, rental properties will pay for your bills, possibly stupid for someone, but I want that car for a long time. There's nothing stupid about it, my guy. I mean, if you're focusing on dividends, I guess it all just depends. Like, do you want dividends today to help pay for bills, or is it like dividends in 10 years time? You noted that you were 52. So it's just, I'm not sure what your objective is. Your objective future dividends, today dividends? It's hard to kind of say. Being in energy and oil and gas, what do you think of blue ammonia? I'm still trying to understand where this hydrogen market is overall going to come from. I recognize, that it's a decent opportunity, that the fuel obviously the sorry, I think it's raining and it's distracting me. That obviously it puts off water as an output and hydrogen. So I'm like sitting here. That is the thing that I'm trying to understand and grasp is like, other than maybe large vehicles, planes, where's all this demand for hydrogen going to come from? And is it warranted in terms of blue? The thing that's also challenging is the CCUS part. And, what are you going to do with respect to storing it? And is it in the right location? There's just complications associated with it. I would probably say I would prefer pink. I'm saying blue ammonia as if like you're talking about blue hydrogen that they then convert to ammonia for shipping, right? And maybe I'm misunderstanding your question, but to me, I'd rather have pink hydrogen, which is using nuclear, or I'd like green hydrogen, which is more so using just renewable sources in general. I think it's kind of silly if you're going to burn fossil fuels to create a secondary fuel that you can use that's cleaner. I just think that there's not a demand at the moment for hydrogen to the extent where I would be burning fossil fuels and sequestering the carbon to be able to use it. If that's the case, you have sufficient time for the demand to grow. I would start off with either pink or green hydrogen personally. But I'm not a big idea. I just don't know why we need all this hydrogen. Everybody promises that they're going to provide hydrogen 10, 15 years down the road. And I'm just like, I just don't see the uses cases for it yet. But maybe airplanes and stuff will take up way more of that than I'm expecting. Thoughts on Google's antitrust? I think it's BS. There's plenty of search engines out there. It's just nobody uses it. So at least I think that you're referring to the search engine piece of it. We'll see. I think they always talk about it. They, have had fines in the EU, and it'll be what it is. Mike, were you still interested in Vegas meetup? Seem to remember you expressing interest. Yes, Vegas meetup, early November. Less stress on 2 Delta. Hey, man. If you want to go 2 Delta rather than 5, there's nothing wrong with that. We got some people exchanging hellos. Isn't IV high on Palantir puts? Why not sell now? Because I just don't think that there's going to be a lot of premium on them. I mean, you could. And I don't think IV is really that high. It's still climbing overnight, really. It's kind of crazy. So let's do like October 18th. So, yeah, like I would only do. This is a prime example too, because you're like, IV's high, right? So let's look at this $28 one, because I don't think I would write it 28. I'd probably do 27. But for $2,800 to lock that up, you're getting $29 for the month. So you're getting a 1% return, basically 29 cents, which is really $29 because you multiply it by 100. And you divide that $29 by 2,800 shares, $2,800 in shares. But literally on Friday, when IV wasn't so high, it was over $1 per share for this contract. So it went down 73% today. So generally, like you could be onto something. It's not to say that IV does have an impact on this, but the fact that it went so far out of the money means that you're going to get way less premium. So generally speaking, when stocks go up, you don't want to sell puts generally. Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. Like I sold on Rocket Lab today, but it didn't go down 70%. It was down like 20% or something like that. And I was like, well, who knows? Maybe it's going to hang out at the $6 range, and I'm only looking for a month anyway. Like, let's look at this. Like, even though IV increased massively today, even at the $35, it went down 40-something%. So, yeah, you generally don't want to sell puts right now, because what if it drops to 30 tomorrow? All these are going to go back to, $1, $1.25. And then if you think about it in that perspective, like let's take this one for example. This was $1. This $30 put was $1.36 more. So we're talking 56 cents plus $1.36. So it's $1.92. $1.92 divided by 30, you're talking about 6% in a month in terms of the income you're generating, coupled with the fact that you'd be able to buy it at $30. So I don't know. I just don't think it's a good time to write on Palantir right now. Cover calls on the other hand. Yeah. Do you know much about the metal mining sector and how those stocks work? I've done some metal mining. I've had some folks reach out to me in the past and ask me to do some CEO interviews and review the PEAs, the preliminary economic assessments of some of the projects that they have going on. But those things are pretty hit or miss sometimes. Not saying all of them. I'm just saying some of the ones that I've asked to be on the channel in the past. And why I say hit or miss is because sometimes they're one project companies. So the whole company is set up and brought to the market based off of the potential of that one asset. And if that asset doesn't go forward, generally that stock is worthless. So just keep in mind that sometimes that's the case. Not saying that's all companies. I mean, I really enjoy BHP. I've made a lot of money on BHP. I had over a 400% return on BHP at one point. I think I sold it at a 375 or so percent return. I would buy into BHP in the future if it's down. Sometimes you just have to recognize that companies are cyclical. Like $51 is actually not a bad price, not best price, but it's kind of just been hanging out, right? So I think I sold it at like 58 or $60. It just doesn't make sense if it's a cyclical business. And what do I mean by cyclical? I mean this. Up in the 2000s when oil was $1.40 a barrel, $140 a barrel, back down, all the way back up in 2011 when oil was $100, back down in 2014, 2015, perfect storm. They had like iron prices fell through the floor, oil prices, etc. is the perfect storm for metals companies. And now it's just kind of been flatlining. So when's it going to drop again? If it drops into the 30s, I'm going to load up. Like, this is a great company, great balance sheet, one of the better balance sheets in the world. They pay a variable dividend. So I just notice this is how the oil and most mining companies work, is generally they'll go through periods of consolidation. And what I mean by consolidation, meaning that, because the market's closed. They'll go through consolidation and the margins will get squeezed. And next thing you know, the price drops out. They're hemorrhaging cash, going into debt, cutting dividends, cutting buybacks. And then slowly, the cost to do business eventually comes break even again, as you have the service companies, Halliburton, etc., starving for services. And then eventually they get more and more work. And then slowly they are making a lot of money again, slowly. And then something happens, right? The commodity gets more scarce, or the value of it goes way up again. Then you're making a crap ton of money again, $20, $30 a barrel for oil or something like that. And then you slowly over time get squeezed because more people at this higher price are getting back to work. They're investing more. They're trying to grow production. That means more demand for Halliburton, Schlumberger, all the other service companies. What does that mean? They can charge more for their prices. So margin per barrel shrinks because it's, say, at $80 a barrel, and the cost continues to go like this. Next thing you know, oil price comes back down. Everybody's losing cash again. Services has to come back down, and eventually it just comes and keeps going like that. That's the same thing with the mining industry. I've observed it a couple times. I've seen and heard the cycle play through for a lot of different oil and gas companies. So when you see, for example, Exxon in 2022 peak out, like it has here, let's just do 5 years. Peak out. I sold Exxon too early. I sold in like this time period, July or something like that. So I sold in like the high 80s, low 90s. So I sold out too early. But I kept my Shell. Shell's a bad example because they switched ticker symbols because they moved to London from the Netherlands. But Exxon has had XOM for a while. But this has been flat. And they're buying back stock, and but the margins are shrinking, right? So you think about it, eventually it's going to hit a point where let's max out now. It's a cyclical stock. Like oil and gas is cyclical. 2007, 2008, oil prices are $140 a barrel. They drop to $30 a barrel. They start coming back up to $100 a barrel again. Next thing you know, not $100 a barrel. It continues to decline. Pandemic oil prices went negative. Nobody was buying oil and gas companies. Oil was going to zero. Solar was taking over, apparently. Nobody's going to be using oil tomorrow. Lo and behold, 4 years later, we're still using 100 million barrels of oil per day. And that's not an exaggeration. We use 100 million barrels or 100 million barrels of oil or 5.2 billion gallons of oil a day. So you heard that right. Almost a gallon per person per day of oil. So there's that. So to me, why hold on to this if it's peaking out? And maybe it continues to go up. Maybe the buybacks do really well. Maybe I'm wrong, but there's so much oil supply right now. 5 million barrels is curtailed. It just doesn't seem like a place right now. I feel like there's more downside risk for oil right now than there is upside. Got to do a 5K with work tomorrow, sitting by fire, smoking a cigar. Makes sense to me. Made me light it up, so it's all my fault. Blame it on me, my guy. Blame it on me. No problems there, especially when it comes to smoking a stogie. You got to tell me what kind, though. I know me and Mike Baskin, if he's still in here, we're both curious what cigar it is. Stop going to Starbucks. Hard pass. Better service than Starbucks are generally helpful and friendly. Exactly. They're excited that you're there. Kava's been a good one for those folks. I just fearful of the fall. I wonder if it has started falling yet. Let's see. Nope, not yet. I think I forget what it was. It was the market cap's 13 billion. And there's only like however many stores. So each store is worth like $20 odd million or something like that. Like $16 million. Something like that. But that's skewed, right? Because obviously you're factoring in future growth and stuff of the like. But it just goes to show you, it's like, well, if each store pulls in $2 to $3 million a year in revenue, then you're paying, 5x price to sales per store. Right. And is that worthwhile? But congrats to anybody that's invested in this one. I didn't expect it to run this hard. I remember late last year, people asking us about it. I thought about getting invested. I just never tried the product. There's one, a couple in Houston, and I never got around to trying the product. And if I had, maybe I'd be all about it, Maybe I'd have been all about it. Let's see. We got Miss Melanie. We got Justin. What's going on, my guy? Meditan Badiara. Hopefully I didn't mess up your name. How to navigate this constant noise when you're Google shareholder. Every day something new comes up and fear takes over Google. While fundamentals of business going stronger, it's very annoying days as an investor. Well, to me, I generally speaking tune a lot of that stuff out and just listen to the earnings reports. Earnings reports have really only said one thing. The only time that I've ever been scared as a Google shareholder is in 2021 and 2022 when the employee count just kept exploding. And it's understandable to an extent why the employee count for Google was exploding. And the reason being was, if you think about it in this perspective, let me pull up Google here really quick, is Google in a 5-year chart expanded very rapidly, like their net income, their YouTube income, their search income, while everybody was working from home, expanded very rapidly. So they went from literally $55 a share, and they went up 200% in the matter of like less than a year and a half, 18 months. And so they're hiring. Next thing you know, 2022 comes along, and they're still hiring, because they're still trying to keep up pace with where they were back in late 2021. So that was my only quarrel with Google. I think since then they've right-sized that impact. But this peak at 190, I think, was a little bit overzealous. But I think down here at 140 something is way too cheap. So, is it a barn burning price? Is it the best price of all time? No. But do I think it should be $1 or $149? No, I do not. If it gets to the 130, 125 level, I'm going to slowly start averaging in every month. So nuclear would be a major disruptor. Yes, nuclear is something that is interesting. Smiles from Junebug. Yes, Vegas should be fun. I'm still not 100% sure if I'm going, but we will see. I'm more likely to go than not. So call spreads expiring Friday. Good luck with that. Sincerely. So it's cheap to buy put as a hedge now. Yeah, I mean, buying puts is always kind of tough, right? You have to time the activity, but if you think it's going to drop to $30 tomorrow, then yeah, it would have been wise to buy a put, because immediately you probably would have been able to 2 or 3x that, because it was down by 70-odd%. If it goes up by the same amount that it was down by today, then yeah, you would have been able to print money. That's the thing. You got to time it, Rocket Lab leaked presentation is targeting June for Neutron's launch. I don't think it was really leaked. Everybody keeps referring to this leaked presentation. It didn't really have anything different than what was on the 2Q earnings call. It might have said something about the acquisition, but I thought June, July 2025 was the current thought process. I'm not trying to be an asshole here. I'm just, since about March, it's been about June, July timeframe. So it's been about the MO for Neutron for the past 6 months. Let's see. Outputs are hydrogen, carbon dioxides. There's still emissions, maybe end user, but definitely in production for blue hydrogen. Yeah, blue hydrogen. I just don't necessarily see the hydrogen use at the moment. Still don't. Vail is looking juicy on a half-decade low iron ore prices. The financials are looking solid too. Yeah, Vail's done a pretty good job. I think I would rather. I think BHP spun off their iron. I know they spun off their copper, but I'm a big fan of BHP. I've worked with those guys in the past, and I really liked working with them. Unfortunately, they're out of the petroleum business. I haven't heard from her. Let's see. Have you looked at TMDX? I have not. Sorry. Vail, 14% dividend. Yeah. But it's times like this, right? Is that sustainable, right? Are you buying it for the 14% dividend? Because if you are, and you're in a place where it might get cut, then you're buying it and it's going to look like a jackknife. Like let's pull up Vail. What's it down to? Is it single digits? Almost. So yeah, this one was up around 18 at something at one point, 21. So I mean, let's see. What's the price to earnings? $4.47. Or sorry, $4.47. $46 billion market cap. Let's see what BHP's at. 16. It's 3 times the size. Interesting. I know Vail's always traded at a premium as well because it's based out of Brazil. But yeah, I'm kind of curious why it's trading rather cheap. I'd have to do more digging on this one, especially if the income is still staying there. Let's see. Dam safety, iron ore sales. $2Q versus $2Q. So $4 billion in US. So trading at $4 billion EBITDA. I mean, I don't know if you can multiply that out, but if you can, 46 divided by 16, yeah, you're trading at a pretty cheap EBITDA. But I guess it's just because prices have come down so much. Let's see, iron ore prices. Oh, crap, you guys couldn't see that, could you? That's my fault. Let me look at iron ore prices really quick. Is it iron that's going down so much? Is that why? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's been kind of falling off a cliff, and it always trades with iron. So yeah, like what other ones do they trade? So nickel, copper. Yes, this is what I was talking about. The nickel break-even costs are going down, but now the price is also going down. Break-even for copper is going up. Iron ore is a big piece for them. So decreasing nickel production. Copper production going up. Iron ore up. So mostly iron ore. And you have copper and nickel. How's like nickel and copper doing? Doesn't really look like. So anyway, that makes sense as to why maybe Vail's down so much. Because it went from 134 down to 98. And you might be sitting there being like, well, from 134 to 98, that's not 50%. So why was Vail trading at 50% compared to where it was? It was at, let's look at the last 5 years. It was at 20, 21, 22. Now it's trading at 10. So why is it trading at 45% of its value if iron ore prices were, in the 130s, let's say? Well, you start to realize that there's underlying costs, right? So it goes back to that underlying cost piece. So there's that. Let's see. An absolute shit cigar. Oh. Think you're better than me. Smoking a cigar too lazy to roll a blunt? Hell yes. Steak and Vale. Yeah, I mean, if you think prices for iron ore are going to turn around, which I want to say, yeah, other than this time when it was literally a perfect storm, which is when I bought BHP when prices were down so low. I loaded up on BHP. So yeah, I mean, this is one where it's like, you know, Vale, I'm pretty certain it's got a decent balance sheet. I think the reason why it's doesn't trade as well compared to say BHP from like a valuation perspective. So as Vale, I think, is very concentrated in iron. I'm not exactly too sure what BHP is concentrated on, but they circulate, I think, a little bit more in terms of what they're potentially mining. But I could be wrong on that one too. Let's see. No margins are squeezing on oil. The crack spread is also compressing. So expect PE expansion to start as companies struggle to keep up revenue if they're trading sideways. Yeah, so if they're trading sideways, but unfortunately most companies are trading down. So, yeah, I mean, eventually a lot of these companies are going to trade at like 20 or 30x PE because they're either going to go negative at some point in terms of earnings per share or much lower in terms of dollar per share. That's typical. I mean, generally when you see oil companies tank, you want to find the ones, you know, even all cyclical companies, right? You want to find the ones that have a good balance sheet. You know, the ones that are super risky on the verge of bankruptcy, yes, potentially higher returns. Like Transocean was a great opportunity during the pandemic, but it was also much closer to bankruptcy. So, you know, once again, you got to choose your risk versus reward. Yeah, December 26th, $8 calls for $2.90. There you go. And that's already like $2 of that is already in the money. So China demand being shite. Cyclical low. Yeah. Agreed on the cyclical low piece. Lithium is killing you. Yeah, sounds like if there's any lithium guys, it's time to buy in. I remember a lot of people were not bag chasing, but they were chasing the run in lithium prices last year. And I remember everyone's like, oh, it's never going to stop. It's never going to stop. It's never going to stop. And where are we at? Where is... There we go. Let's pull that up really quick. Yeah, everyone and their mom was starting to get involved. And that's when you kind of have to stick to your patience and be like, is it really that scarce? Or is it just temporary? And a lot of this, I think, was fixed by the hype of, am I showing the right one? Yeah, okay. The hype of a lot of like the ESG investments like BlackRock, and they were all trying to force people to get involved. I'll tell you one I wasn't expecting was gold. I was expecting gold to kind of hang out at this 2050 sort of price. So the fact that it's been on a little bit of a run is pretty impressive. So good for folks that are holding gold. Cool. Well, been live for 2 hours. I really appreciate it, guys. Really love chatting with you guys, and hopefully you guys were able to get some good value out of this. I know um, at the end of the day, it's a big day for Palantir, but I'm sure those of you guys that are friends of the channel slash listen to Amit quite a bit, you're probably already bored of me talking about Palantir. But if you guys are ever curious in the future, I do have some firsthand experience with Palantir, and if you guys ever have questions, maybe one of these days I can do a stream strictly on my experience with it. I know Amit's done an interview with me in the past. I don't think he necessarily knew much. Well, that's not. I'm not trying to say he didn't know much. What's the word I'm trying to say? He didn't have as much experience or hands-on experience with it, and he still, I guess, doesn't really have hands-on experience. But he hadn't had the full opportunity to do all the research about what's coming down the pipeline and what impacts are kind of happening at different companies and all the partnership opportunities back then. It was at least a year ago because I was living in my old apartment back then. So it might have actually been even 2022. So it might have been a year and a half, 2 years ago at this point, where I did that interview with Amit. So it might be worthwhile to sit with you guys, answer questions if you guys have any in the future. But for now, things are going well, and hopefully we can get some Cash Flow Chronicles going again with Mr. Patel. So I'll reach out to him after I'm done this stream and see where he's at. Let's just see if there's any other questions in here. You're here from a midstream and loving Palantir. That's awesome, man. It was early. Wednesday's Cash Flow Chronicles. Yeah, I'll have to reach out to Mr. Patel. But do me a favor, guys, for those of you guys that are just listening, the 73 of you still around, I really appreciate you guys showing the love last week and then this week. I'm glad you guys are getting some cool thoughts and maybe some education out of the chat, or at least a little bit of my knowledge transferred onto you guys. And a cigar talk, Cash and Cigars. Yeah, the love from the last week's stream was phenomenal. So 65 subscribers off of one stream, which was insane. So would love to see that happen again. That just to me means that you guys are really enjoying what I'm saying and learning. So if you guys feel like you learned something, please copy the link, share it with a friend, share it with a family member who might also learn something from this. We're just trying to grow the community, so only share it with good people. Don't share it with like some random guy who only listens to water cooler stocks, right? Like we're talking about people that, I don't want to say don't give it to noobs. Obviously, lead people, to the light, right? We're all about a community of finding what fits best for you. If that's selling puts, then that works, right? If it's only doing options, then that's cool. If it's about day trading, that's cool too, right? But it's about finding your area where you're comfortable, you sleep well at night. And I think a lot of times, unfortunately, folks are so rudimentary in their knowledge base about some things, or have such little experience, they don't even know what the right questions to ask are, right? So same thing, if you're like interested in space and you're not really a rocket scientist, it's going to be hard for you to ask the right question about how to put a rocket into space. You're going to ask something super rudimentary, which could be a super broad answer. And so sometimes I think stock talks need to be more a little bit like that. People are like, should I buy this company? It's like, well, it's not so black and white. I mean, if it's a dog shit company that's going bankrupt tomorrow, the answer is probably you shouldn't buy that company. But there could be many scenarios where that stock is right for you to own. There could be many scenarios where that stock isn't right for you to own. And it all depends on your objectives and what you're trying to do with your portfolio. You could strictly be retired. And if you're like, should I invest in TQQQ? I'd be like, probably not. You're retired. You need this money for income or what have you. Or you could say my pension covers my income. I'm looking to, grow my total net worth for grandchildren, etc. I could be like, yeah, I mean, if it's not going to be sold for the next 30, 40 years, put a small percentage of your portfolio in TQQQ, just don't put 100%, especially if you're not ready for that sort of volatility or risk. So it just goes back always to having a conversation piece about it, right? And I think sometimes that turns a lot of people off because everyone just assumes that there's one size fits all way to invest in the stock market. That's just not the case. And a lot of times those dudes that tout that they have $9 million and they sold their business for $100 million or whatever, and they're 19 years old. A lot of those guys are crooks. So they'll tell you whatever it is so that you sign up for their course, and it is what it is. But hopefully you guys had some good enjoyment out of this. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys soon, and let me know if this was helpful or if there's any other things that I might have an ability to kind of touch on, but I skipped over by accident. So you guys rock. Congratulations on a great start to the week for my fellow Palantir investors. And thank you for not shying away for those of you that have been listening and here since direct listing day. And yeah, you guys work hard, and you guys did a really good job in having the conviction to stay invested when a lot of people sold out, So, all right, my guys, I appreciate you. I'm gonna go probably grab some water, and I don't know, maybe I'll go smoke a cigar. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm gonna see what else is on, who else is streaming, and probably go watch some Monday Night Football as well. You guys rock. Have a good night. Cheers.